The arrogant arrival. The night sky over Earth was calm. Stars glittered like tiny diamonds. People in small towns were sleeping peacefully, unaware that something strange was about to happen. Far above, 3 enormous silver ships floated silently. Inside them stood 3 alien warrior women from the Varelli Empire, known across galaxies for their pride and strength. Commander Citra, the leader, laughed loudly as she looked down at Earth. Her golden armor shined under the ship's lights. "This planet is weak," she said, flipping her long silver hair back. "Its people are nothing. They won't even understand what hit them." Her 2 companions, Nyla and Zira, laughed along. They had conquered planets larger and richer than Earth. To them, this world was like a child's toy, ready to be crushed under their boots. "Let us land," Nyla said, her violet eyes flashing with excitement. "I want to see the so-called humans with my own eyes." Without any fear, the 3 ships pierced through Earth's atmosphere. Flames danced around their crafts, but the ships remained unharmed. People looked up in shock as the sky tore open with fiery trails. Some screamed, some ran, but most just stared, frozen in fear. The ships landed with a thunderous roar in a deserted field outside a small town. The ground shook violently. Windows shattered. Dogs barked wildly. Streetlights flickered and went dark. And from the dust and fire, the 3 alien warriors emerged. Citra stood tall, her armor gleaming like a second sun. Nyla cracked her knuckles, and Zira spun a small, deadly-looking blade between her fingers. They walked slowly toward the town, their footsteps heavy, their faces full of arrogant smiles. "They hide like rats," Zira said, laughing. "Are these the mighty humans we heard so much about? How pathetic." Without warning, Citra raised her hand. A bright beam shot from her gauntlet, striking a stone statue of a local hero. The statue exploded into 1,000 pieces. The loud blast echoed for miles. The message was clear. Resistance was useless. Some humans gathered at a distance, peeking from behind broken fences and cars. They held phones, recording everything, hoping someone somewhere could help. But the warriors only laughed harder. "See how they tremble?" Nyla shouted, her voice full of mockery. "They are nothing but insects before us." As they moved forward, buildings cracked, cars flipped over, and the very ground beneath them seemed to tremble. They believed nothing could stop them. Their empire had fought wars for centuries. They had destroyed entire fleets. What could a few weak Earthlings possibly do? But then, something strange happened. Out of the thick smoke and dust, a figure appeared. A lone human man. He was not dressed like a soldier. No armor, no weapons. Just simple clothes. A black jacket, old jeans, and boots covered in dirt. He walked calmly, hands in his pockets, as if he had no fear. The alien women paused. For the first time that night, their laughter stopped. "Who is that fool?" Zira said, frowning. "A brave one," Nyla smirked, tightening her fists. "Or a very stupid one." The man kept walking toward them, his face calm and unreadable. His eyes, dark and sharp, locked onto theirs without hesitation. The way he moved, so steady, so fearless, made the warriors uneasy, though they would never admit it. Citra stepped forward, her voice dripping with arrogance. "Human," she called out. "Bow before us. Kneel, and perhaps we will spare your miserable life." But the man didn't stop. He didn't bow. He didn't even blink. Instead, he finally spoke. His voice was soft, but it carried across the broken town like a hammer hitting stone. "You shouldn't have come here," he said. The warriors exchanged quick glances. Was this some kind of joke? Did this weak creature think he could threaten them? "Kill him," Citra ordered. Nyla grinned wickedly and rushed forward. The ground cracked under her power. She swung her arm at the man's head with deadly force, fast enough to break a steel beam in 2. But in a blink he moved, not by much, just a small step to the side, and Nyla's strike hit nothing but empty air. The force of her own missed attack sent her crashing into the ground, a small crater forming where she landed. Dust exploded upward, Zira and Citra stared in disbelief. How had he moved so fast? No human was supposed to be that quick. The man stood there, still calm, brushing a speck of dust from his jacket. "I warned you," he said quietly. For the first time in their lives, the alien warriors felt something unfamiliar creep up their spines. It was fear, and the real battle had not even begun yet. Mockery turns to confusion. For a long, heavy moment, no one moved. The dust from Nyla's crash was still settling when Cetra's golden eyes narrowed dangerously at the lone human standing before them. The man didn't flinch. He didn't show fear. Instead, he shifted his weight slightly, like someone simply adjusting his footing before a casual stroll. To the alien warriors who had shattered cities and broken armies, this kind of calmness was not just confusing, it was insulting. Nyla growled low in her throat, rising from the cracked ground, her armor scratched and dented from her own missed blow. Anger burned in her veins. Never before had she missed a strike. Not against the strongest beasts of the outer worlds, not against the cybernetic warriors of fallen planets. Yet this fragile-looking man had made her miss, without even trying. Zira's sharp voice cut through the air like a blade. "It was luck," she snapped. "No human moves like that. He is bluffing." But even as she said it, doubt crept into her heart. The man stood with a kind of silence that was heavier than any roar. His steady gaze wasn't just looking at them, it was measuring them, judging them. And strangely, for the first time in their long warrior lives, the alien women felt like they were the ones being evaluated, not the other way around. Citra refused to be shamed by a single human. She raised her hand high and summoned her power. A golden energy swirled in her palm, crackling furious. "Enough!" she shouted, her voice thundering across the broken town. "You dare mock the Varelli Empire? Bow or be destroyed." The man didn't move. His expression didn't change. Only his head tilted slightly, as if he were listening to a song only he could hear. Citra hurled the energy blast directly at him. The golden fireball screamed through the air, tearing apart the ground as it traveled. Sparks flew, debris shattered in all directions. It was a strike that could melt tanks and punch through battleships. And yet, just before impact, the man took a single, effortless step to the side. The blast missed him entirely, crashing into an abandoned building behind him, which exploded into a massive cloud of fire and dust. A shockwave rippled outward, shaking cars and rattling bones. The man didn't even glance back at the destruction. He simply adjusted his jacket, brushing invisible dust from his sleeve, as if the whole attack had been nothing more than a passing breeze. For the first time, true confusion flashed across the faces of the warrior women. Nyla, breathing hard, looked at Citra. "What is he?" she whispered, the bravado draining from her voice. Zira stepped forward quickly, trying to reclaim control. Her twin daggers gleamed under the broken moonlight. "If power won't break him, then speed will," she said sharply. With terrifying agility, Zira blurred forward, her blades slicing through the air in deadly arcs aimed at the human's throat and heart. She moved faster than the eye could follow, a blur of killing intent. But again the man moved. No flash, no teleportation, no magic. Just small, simple, perfect movements. Tilting his body, stepping just enough, and every one of Zira's strikes passed harmlessly through empty space. Worse yet, he moved with such lazy ease, it was as if he could predict every angle before Zira even finished swinging. Zira stumbled back, her breath ragged, realizing that in just a few seconds she had used every killing technique she knew, and landed not a single touch. The man looked at her, almost sympathetically, and said only 3 words. "You're too slow." The words stung more than any wound. They pierced through the armor of their pride. In their minds, Earth had been a joke, a forgotten, backward planet with no warriors worth mentioning. Now, standing in front of one man who moved like a whisper of death, they realized how wrong they were. From the shadows, more humans were now gathering, drawn by the sounds of battle, by the strange spectacle. Old men, young boys, women with their children. No weapons, no shields. Just wide eyes and silent awe, and none of them seemed afraid. The warrior women stepped back slightly, their confidence cracking like old stone under a hammer. Citra gritted her teeth, trying to understand. "This is impossible," she hissed. "He's just a man, a human." The human's lips curved upward just slightly. Not a grin, not arrogance, but something worse for them to face. Pity. He looked at them not as enemies, but as fools. And that somehow was a deeper wound than any sword could make. The alien warriors, once so sure of their dominance, now stood on shaky ground, and deep within their hearts, a dangerous question began to form. Had they just picked a fight with something far greater than themselves? The hidden strength for the first time since landing on Earth, the three alien warriors stood still, truly still, their proud hearts weighed down by something they had never felt before: uncertainty. The simple man before them, with no armor, no weapons, no visible power, had made a mockery of their strength and speed without even raising his hand in attack. And yet, it wasn't just his calmness that unsettled them now. It was the feeling that he was holding something back, something they could neither see nor understand. The wind shifted, carrying the scent of scorched earth and shattered pride. Dust swirled around their feet, but the man stood untouched, like the center of a storm that bowed to him alone. The alien women, who had once laughed at Earth's weakness, now found their breaths uneven and shallow. Citra tightened her fists, trying to summon her rage, trying to remember who she was. A champion of the Vireli Empire, undefeated across 100 worlds. "He's playing tricks," she muttered under her breath. "He must be hiding some technology, some invisible shield." "No," Zira whispered hoarsely, shaking her head, her twin daggers trembling slightly in her hands. "I felt it when I attacked. He wasn't protected, he moved before I even struck. He read me," Nyla added, her voice low, bitter with confusion. Like an open book, the human man remained silent, watching them, the faintest smile playing on his lips. Not cruel, not mocking, just patient, as if he had all the time in the world. Without waiting for an order, Nyla charged again, desperate to wipe away the shame. This time she unleashed everything, her speed, her strength, her years of training honed on battlefields across the stars. The ground split beneath her feet as she rushed forward like a meteor aimed at the man's heart. For a fraction of a second, time itself seemed to stretch. Then, with almost lazy grace, the human shifted his weight to the side, one hand rising, not to strike but simply to tap Nyla on the shoulder as she sped past. A soft touch, a harmless brush. Yet the result was catastrophic. The momentum Nyla had built could not be stopped. Her own force betrayed her. She spun uncontrollably, crashing into the dirt with a bone-rattling thud, sliding across the broken ground until she lay still, groaning. Gasps rose from the human spectators. Some clutched their chests. Others stared with mouths open in pure disbelief. Citra and Zira froze, watching in horror as their strongest fighter lay defeated without a single real blow exchanged. The human man turned slightly toward them now, hands still relaxed, voice still soft. "Strength without control," he said, "is nothing but chaos." Zira's face twisted in fury and humiliation. Her pride screamed for vengeance. She hurled both daggers at the man with perfect, deadly precision, one aimed at his throat, the other at his heart. The daggers sliced through the air, spinning with lethal speed. The man didn't even blink. At the last instant, with movements so small they were almost invisible, he leaned his body just enough for both blades to miss him by mere hairs. Zipping harmlessly past into the dark, Zira's heart stopped. He had seen them coming, not with armor, not with shields, not with tricks, with eyes, with understanding, with something the alien warriors had forgotten long ago. True skill. "Enough," Citra barked, raising her hand to stop Zira from further embarrassing herself. Her voice wavered despite her effort to sound commanding. The man's gaze shifted to her, steady and unwavering. "You came here believing power was everything," he said calmly, his voice cutting through the night like a knife through silk. But real power, he paused. Real power is invisible. It's the spirit behind the body, the mind behind the movement, the heart behind the hand. Cetra swallowed hard. Somewhere deep inside she knew this was no ordinary man. He was something Earth had kept hidden, a secret strength that no fleet, no empire, no technology could ever measure. And for the first time, she questioned if they had made a mistake far greater than they could ever fix. In the far distance, clouds gathered, lightning flashing across the dark sky. It felt as if the planet itself was waking up, and it wasn't happy. An earthly lesson. The silence after the failed attacks was heavier than any explosion. It spread across the battlefield, crawling into the hearts of the alien warriors and the watching humans alike. Somewhere in the distance, a broken street lamp flickered, casting ghostly shadows across the ruined ground. Cetra, the proud commander, felt the weight of 1,000 doubts pressing against her chest, but she forced herself to stand tall. Her people were watching, from orbit, from distant stars, and she could not show weakness. Yet every fiber of her being screamed that something about this human was wrong, something beyond their training, beyond their understanding. The human man stepped forward, and with every casual step he took, the earth itself seemed to grow heavier beneath the alien's feet. It wasn't magic, it wasn't technology. It was the raw, terrifying presence of someone who didn't need force to dominate the battlefield. He needed only to exist. His simple movements spoke louder than any roar of an army. "You have fought many wars," the man said, his voice calm, but carrying a sharpness that cut into their very souls. "You conquered planets with weapons, ships, and fear, but you never learned to conquer yourselves." Cetra's jaw tightened. She couldn't allow her warriors to fall apart now. She would break this human herself. With a battle cry that shook the shattered buildings, she leaped at him, her fist charged with pure energy. It was not just an attack. It was her pride, her history, her very identity thrown into that strike. But the man didn't even step back. He waited, reading every twitch of her muscles, every breath she took. At the last second, just when her fist was a hair's breadth away from crushing his ribs, he caught her wrist with one hand. Effortless, no strain on his face. His grip was like steel wrapped in silk, unyielding yet calm. The shock in Cetra's eyes was immediate. She tried to pull back, tried to break free, but it was useless. She, a warrior who had ripped apart armored beasts on distant moons, could not move, a single inch against him. The man's voice dropped low and firm. "You have strength," he said, "but no balance." With a simple twist of his wrist, he flipped Cetra through the air. Her body slammed into the cracked ground with a heavy, echoing thud, sending up a cloud of dust. She groaned, struggling to rise. Pride wounded far deeper than her body. The watching alien women could only stare, frozen as their commander, their unbreakable leader, was brought down without a single real blow. The humans watching from the shadows didn't cheer. They didn't mock. They simply stood in solemn silence, as if witnessing a sacred lesson written in pain and humility. The man looked around slowly, his gaze touching every broken piece of earth, every trembling hand that still dared to hold, a phone and record, every old farmer standing unarmed but unbowed. "You came to crush us," he said, his voice now carrying the quiet thunder of a storm on the horizon. "But you forgot something." He gestured to the people behind him, men, women, children, old and young, none of them warriors, none of them powerful in the traditional sense. "Our strength," he continued, "is not in our weapons, not in our machines. It is here." He tapped his chest over his heart. "It is in the fire that does not die, even when the world falls apart." The alien warriors listened, not because they wanted to, but because they could not look away. His words struck something raw and forgotten inside them. A memory of why warriors first picked up swords, before politics, before empires, before pride-clouded purpose. "You mock Earth," the man said. "But Earth is not just a rock floating in space. Earth is a soul, and you have woken it." As he spoke, the winds picked up. Thunder rumbled louder now, closer. Dark clouds churned above, like an ancient beast stirring in its slumber. It was as if the planet itself was answering him, not with weapons or armies, but with the raw, furious spirit of survival. Citra, bruised and gasping, lifted her head from the ground. Through blurred vision she saw not just the man, but the people behind him. Weak? No. They were unbreakable. Their hands were empty, but their hearts were full of something her empire had long forgotten. Unity, faith, courage that did not depend on power. Citra's pride cracked fully at last, shattering into pieces she could never put back. She realized they hadn't come to defeat humans. They had come to be defeated by what humanity truly was. A lesson written not in blood, but in spirit. The human man stepped back slightly, giving them a choice. Bow, or be broken beyond repair, and, for the first time in their long, victorious lives, the alien warriors hesitated, not out of fear of death, but out of the crushing weight of respect they could no longer deny. The unseen power of Earth, the battlefield lay quiet, but the silence was not peaceful. It was heavy, thick with the weight of realization. The three alien warrior women, once proud conquerors, now stood bruised and broken, not by weapons, not by armies, but by something they couldn't see, couldn't measure, and couldn't destroy. The human man had shown them a truth more terrifying than any battlefield defeat. Real strength was invisible, and it lived in the very spirit of Earth's people. The man turned his back on them, calmly walking toward the gathering humans who had crept closer, drawn by the impossible sight of alien warriors defeated without a single shot fired. He did not fear an attack from behind because he knew something the aliens had only just begun to understand. True power did not need to guard itself with fear. Around him, the humans stood shoulder to shoulder. They were farmers, teachers, shopkeepers, and students, ordinary people with nothing but courage in their hearts. Some were old, some barely more than children, but all of them shared the same quiet defiance in their eyes. They had no shields, no weapons, and yet they stood as tall as any army ever had. The man raised his hand slowly, not in command, but as a symbol. A silent message passed through the crowd. No words were needed. They knew what he meant. We stand, together. Citra wiped blood from the corner of her mouth. Her golden armor cracked and dull now. She watched in stunned silence as these humans, these so-called weaklings, formed a wall stronger than any force field her empire had ever built. She looked at Nyla and Zira, and for once no orders came to her lips. What could she command against this unseen force that could not be broken? In the shadows of the ruined buildings, an old man with a bent back stepped forward. His face was lined with age, his hands rough from years of hard labor. A small boy, barely able to lift a stick, stood beside him, his tiny hand clutching the old man's. They had nothing to fight with except their will, and still they stepped forward. From another corner, a mother with her infant strapped to her chest stood beside a mechanic covered in grease. A baker still wearing his flour-stained apron joined a nurse holding a simple first aid kit. They had come, not because they were soldiers, but because they refused to bow to fear. The alien women realized with growing horror that they hadn't simply challenged a few individuals. They had challenged the spirit of a planet that refused to kneel. The human man looked back once, his sharp eyes meeting Citra's. "You can break a sword," he said, his voice carrying across the broken earth, "but you cannot break a soul that refuses to surrender." Above them, the storm clouds churned faster, thunder growling like a sleeping giant ready to wake. Lightning flashed, painting the sky with furious silver veins. It was as if the planet itself had been listening, and now rose in silent agreement. Citra's hands trembled at her sides. She had fought monsters with teeth like swords, machines the size of mountains, armies that blotted out the skies. But she had never fought a spirit like this. It was invisible, untouchable, and it terrified her more than any weapon ever had. Nyla shifted uncomfortably, her violet eyes wide with something she had never felt before: respect. "Commander," she whispered, barely able to say the words. "We can't win here, not against this." Zira, ever the sharpest of them, lowered her head slightly. "This is not a planet to conquer," she said quietly. "It is a home to defend." And somehow they knew, if they continued to fight, they would not just lose a battle. They would lose their honor, their souls, and the respect they still barely clung to. The human man said nothing more. He didn't have to. Earth had spoken, through its people, and the message was clear. We are small, but we are unbreakable. The alien women slowly, painfully, dropped to one knee. Not in surrender, but in acknowledgement. An ancient sign of respect among warriors who knew they had faced something greater than themselves and survived not through force but through humility. The humans didn't cheer. They didn't mock. They simply watched, standing tall, their silent pride filling the air thicker than any sound. In that moment, Earth and its unexpected warriors taught a lesson that would echo through galaxies for generations. True power was not in the muscles, not in the weapons, not in the fleets. It was in the unseen fire burning in the heart of a people who refused to bow. Respect earned. The air was different now. The storm above had stilled, not in fear but in respect. The earth beneath seemed to breathe slower, heavier, as if the planet itself recognized what had just happened. Where moments ago there had been roaring pride, now there was only quiet, understanding. The alien warriors knelt on the broken ground, their heads bowed low, not out of defeat, but out of honor, offering a gesture few had ever seen from the mighty Vareli Empire. The humans, too, stood still. No mocking smiles, no shouts of triumph. Only silent acknowledgement passed between them and the kneeling aliens, a shared truth that needed no words. They had looked into each other's hearts and found something neither side had expected, a strength not made of armor or technology, but of spirit, dignity, and unbreakable will. Commander Cetra lifted her eyes slowly, meeting the gaze of the human man who had stood alone against them. She saw no hatred in his eyes, no arrogance, only calm patience. The patience of one who had fought many battles, not all with fists, but with the silent wars of the soul. A man who understood that true victory was not about humiliation, but about teaching. "I came here," Cetra said, her voice rough and low, "believing your people were weak, that we would crush your spirit as we crushed others before." Her golden armor was cracked, her pride humbled, but her warrior's heart still beat strong. "I see now. It is not your weapons that make you strong. It is your heart. It is your unity." The human man nodded once, a simple gesture, deep with meaning. Around him the humans, old, young, rich, poor, stood side by side as a proof of her words. They had not hidden. They had not fled. They had come together, and together they had won without raising a single blade. Nyla and Zira, standing slowly beside their commander, placed their right fists over their hearts, a Vareli symbol of deepest respect. It was a gesture they had reserved only for the greatest of their own leaders, and now they offered it to an earthling. The human man stepped forward, closing the distance between himself and Cetra. He extended a hand, not in dominance, not in mockery, but in honest friendship. A heavy silence fell as Cetra looked at the hand. In her world, treaties were signed with blood, oaths sealed with violence. But here, on this strange blue planet, strength was measured in trust, in choosing peace over pride. Slowly, almost reverently, Cetra reached out and took his hand in hers. The moment their hands met, the storm clouds above rumbled softly, like a satisfied sigh. The winds calmed, the earth stilled. It was as if the very soul of the planet recognized the gesture and gave its blessing. Around them, the gathered humans let out a breath they hadn't realized they were holding. Some smiled, some wiped silent tears from their eyes. Not because an enemy had been beaten, but because understanding had been won. The alien warriors stood straight once again, but now with a different kind of pride, one not rooted in conquest, but in growth, in humility. They had not lost honor here today. They had found a deeper, purer version of it. Saitra spoke again, her voice stronger now. "We will not return to our empire with tales of Earth's weakness," she said. "We will return with stories of Earth's strength, strength born not from destruction but from unity, from spirit." The human man gave a rare, small smile, the kind that could move mountains more than any shout. "Earth," he said simply, "welcomes allies who understand." And in that shattered town, under a clearing sky, a new alliance was born. Not of necessity, not of fear, but of respect earned through the invisible fires of courage and heart. In the ruins of broken buildings and scattered dust, something far greater had been built. A bridge between worlds, forged not by steel, but by the timeless power of dignity. And somewhere deep beneath the earth the planet smiled, knowing that its greatest treasure had once again been protected. Allies forged in humility. The first light of dawn crept across the broken town, washing the shattered streets and wounded fields in soft gold. Where only hours ago there had been the roar of battle and the crackle of energy blasts, now there was silence, not the silence of fear, but of healing. Dust still floated in the cool morning air, but among it rose something stronger: hope. The three alien warrior women, once arrogant conquerors, now stood side by side with the humans they had mocked. Their armor, battered and dented, carried the marks of the lesson they would never forget. Their heads held high, not with the pride of victory, but with the dignity of understanding. Commander Saitra looked across the faces of the people, old farmers, children clinging to their mothers, mechanics with oil-stained hands, bakers, teachers, shopkeepers, all standing together with quiet strength. They had no battle scars, no shining weapons, yet they had proven to be the fiercest defenders she had ever faced. The human man stood in the center, silent as always, his presence still larger than words could explain. His hands were relaxed at his sides, his face calm, his eyes deep with something ancient, something even older than the stars the aliens sailed between. Saitra stepped forward, armor creaking, and went down on one knee once more. This time, by choice, by heart. Nyla and Zira mirrored her without hesitation, their heads bowed, their hands over their hearts. "In the name of the Vareli Empire," Saitra said, her voice carrying across the dawn-streaked sky, "we swear an oath, not as rulers, not as conquerors, but as protectors, as allies." The human man nodded once solemnly. His acceptance was simple, because on Earth trust was not sealed by ceremonies but by actions. And in standing before him now, humble and true, they had already passed the only test that mattered. From the scattered ruins, people began to step forward. A farmer handed Saitra a loaf of bread. A mechanic offered Zira a battered, grease-stained cap. A little girl, shy but brave, placed a necklace of hand-woven flowers around Nyla's neck. The alien warriors, who had been celebrated across galaxies for their power, felt tears burn their eyes for the first time. Not from pain, but from a kindness so pure it humbled them more deeply than any defeat ever could. Above them, the first true sunlight broke through the thinning clouds, casting the battlefield in warm light. The broken earth, the shattered buildings, even the charred wrecks of cars, all of it seemed to glow, reborn not in perfection, but in resilience. The human man finally spoke, his voice soft, but carrying far, as if the very air leaned closer to hear. "Strength," he said, "is not measured by the power to destroy. True strength is measured by the courage to protect, the will to endure, and the heart to forgive." The words sank deep into the warriors' souls, carving themselves into memory, words they would carry back across the stars, words that would change empires. A bond was formed that day, not one of blood or politics, but of spirit, an unbreakable promise that when darkness came again, Earth and Vareli would stand side by side, not as enemies, but as brothers and sisters, bound by respect earned in the hardest way possible. In the days that followed, the alien ships, once symbols of terror, were repurposed, not as war machines, but as bridges. Technology was shared, cultures were exchanged, laughter replaced fear, trust replaced suspicion, and slowly, painfully, beautifully, something new grew from the ashes of that broken town. A future not built on conquest, but on humility, on understanding, on the invisible power that had saved the earth and would one day save many worlds beyond. As the sun climbed higher, the human man turned away from the crowd and began walking toward the horizon, his silhouette growing smaller with every step, until he vanished into the morning mist. No one called after him, no one needed to, because legends, true legends, do not need to stay to be remembered. They live on, in every heart they touched, in every soul they awakened, in every future they helped to shape. And somewhere deep in the roots of the earth where the oldest dreams of humanity slept, the world whispered a promise back. We are small, but we are mighty, and we stand together.